Welcome to the Meditation Conversation, the podcast to support your spiritual revolution. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, and I love talking to Dolores Fazzino in this episode. She's been a pioneer in the energy healing world, having first developed and utilized her gifts back in the 70s. I love connecting with these early awakened souls. It can be hard to imagine just how different it was working with energy, for example, 50 years ago when the world was even more physically and materially oriented than it is now. We may take for granted just how easily we can connect to like-minded community in these days of the internet compared to back then. Dr. Dolores Fazzino is a trailblazing thought leader, visionary, and innovator who is revolutionizing the realm of energy healing. As a renowned nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer, she fearlessly combines the power of intuition and trust to facilitate profound transformations. Driven by deep belief in the body's innate wisdom, she guides individuals on a transformative journey, empowering them to tap into their own healing potential. So be sure you check out karagoodwin.com where you can get a free 10-minute meditation. If you want support for your meditation practice, I have a 21-day online program to help you develop your practice. There's also the Healing Hearth membership where you can get live online assistance to your questions about meditation and life. And you can also get a personalized recorded meditation/energy transmission to help you get through whatever challenges are showing up in your life. All of that and more on karagoodwin.com. And now enjoy this episode. Well, welcome, Dolores. I am so excited to talk to you today. Thanks for being on the Meditation Conversation.
Well, thanks, Kara, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here to share with you and also your audience.
Well, I'm excited to talk about your journey. Can you tell us how you got to where you are now with your practice?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I've been in the healthcare industry for about 45 years. It's close to 50 now. But, you know, I- we all have those stories in our lives where they're pivotal moments. And believe it or not, as a youngster, and I grew up in the product of the 60s and the 70s, I was into music and I was on the pathway to become a concert clarinetist. And in the 11th hour, I did a pivot after I witnessed the miraculous healing of my father's chronic health condition, which he had for 10 years, with a non-traditional modality of healing, laying on of hands, which back in the 1970s was considered quackery by Western medicine. And I knew in that moment when I witnessed what I witnessed that my life changed forever. It was like my initiation, that it was my mission and goal in this lifetime to go into healthcare and to bridge the physical with the spiritual and the visible with the invisible. And so I decided to go into healthcare and I became a nurse and led on the pathway to a nurse practitioner. And I've always been playing on the cusp of the edges of everything because I believe I'm a rebel at heart. And when somebody says you can't do something, I always say, watch me. And I just knew that this is where my mission and my life's work was going to be. Now, flash forward over the 50 years since then, thank goodness we're heading in a different direction than what we were 50 years ago, because everything was so black and white. They were not looking at the shades of gray in between. And I'm really delighted to see that probably the last 30 years, the 1990s, they started looking at complementary and alternative medicine and integrative medicine, because we are just more than what we could physically see. Seriously. Many of us know that. We know that because many of us are empaths, intuitives, and highly sensitive people. We were born that way. And we feel and sense things that people cannot see, feel, or sense. Okay. Energy, everything is energy. Okay. When you look at the rooms that we're both in, Kara, right? You and I are both a denser demonstration of energy. So that's what we could see. But every item that we have in our office space, and us in particular, if we were to go under an extremely high power microscope, we would see that everything is moving like energy. Now, take that a step further, if you are looking at an iceberg in the ocean, okay, what you could see above the surface is the physical, okay? But below the surface is the emotional, mental, spiritual, dimensional, ancestral stuff, which is all energy, but it's more like in our world, it's like wavelengths. It's like radio waves, if you want to call it that. Some of us can feel and sense it. Some people cannot. And I believe for the longest time, it was the belief that those never existed, or they were somehow not related to the physical at all. But newsflash, they're all interconnected and they're all related in ways you have no idea. So when you're able to look at what's underneath the surface of the iceberg and heal all that up or make sense of it or whatever you choose to do, a lot of times you fall into an alignment and you're able to heal, transform, transmute, transcend the physical, which is a beautiful thing. But it all starts with the stuff that's below the surface, or the stuff we can't see, or what we call the invisible stuff.
I love that. So for you, you talked about your path started with this healing with your father, and then you went into basically like traditional medicine with the nurse and nurse practitioner, but you wanted to be this bridge between kind of the physical, the energetic. Did you have these capabilities, these skills, and so forth from the time you were a child? Was it hard to find somebody to help you hone those skills in the 70s? Like how did the energy part come together for you?
Well, this is kind of interesting. I was born that way. So things would happen at a very young age for me. I just knew things. And of course, my parents, God bless them, we always pick out our parents. And they didn't know what to do with me because, it was a conundrum to them because I didn't fit the mold of what a kid should be or whatever.
So were you picking up on the intuitive hits?
I would get intuitive hits and everything of that nature. The good news is that, and I didn't find this out till many years later, my mom's mother was extremely spiritual. She was one of my first spiritual teachers. It's like, you just gravitate to people who are like you. And she got me and she knew who I was at a very young age. So we would talk all things spiritual, basically, the things that I could never talk to anybody else about. She was well ahead of her time. And she continues to assist me from the other side as well, and has been for the last 50 years. And so it's nice when you have mentors like that. And then I also found out on my dad's side of the family that my great-grandmother was a healer. So how they explained it to me, and I didn't know this until I was, in my, I would say, early 30s, my dad said, oh yeah, when people were not feeling well, they'd go see your great-grandmother. And then when they left, they felt better. And I said, oh, she was a healer.
Wow.
So it's like you kind of have those modalities in your ancestry. And it's almost like that's probably why I picked my parents, basically, for that reason, to assist with, how I needed to maneuver through our interesting times here on Earth. And they're very interesting, and they have been for a very long time. But anyway.
So then because I understand you work with energy medicine?
I do.
Correct. So did you find somebody to help you to hone those skills?
Well, Kira, this is interesting. We all have a tool set that we are born with, or we've worked with it in another time and place, in another dimension, another system or whatever. So these are like tools or gifts that we have that we come into this, lifetime with. And it was very challenging for me because I would look at different modalities that were out there. of what I was doing and see if I could plug myself in, because the thing is like what I was doing was so different compared to what was out there at the time. I feel that after much exploration, reconnective healing with Dr. Eric Pearl was probably the closest thing. And so I studied with him back in the 90s, and I found that that was almost like a gateway for me to go into even deeper of what my healing modality and methodology is. So, what I'm saying is that I think many of us try to play down and make ourselves small to fit in some places. So it's like legit. And I'm going to invite the audience that if you have skills or inklings or whatever, trust that stuff because you've utilized it before. It may not fit into a label, but who made up the label stuff? Do you understand what I'm saying?
100%. And I love what you're saying. And, thinking back to the 90s, we've just exploded in terms of people understanding energy, using energy. The 90s, it was not like that. So I can completely imagine trying to find somebody who can speak the language of what you're trying to do innately, or what you're already doing is what I mean to say, innately and intuitively. But trying to find the coherence with what you're already doing. Tell us what it was like when you pre-90s, like when you were just utilizing this in your nursing or however it was working for you. What was that like for you? Just kind of blazing
Well,
your own trail.
it was kind of interesting because I worked, I still work in the clinical setting as a nurse practitioner a couple of days a week. And my area of expertise is surgery. So I took to surgery like a duck to water, basically. And I just feel very comfortable there. Because when you look at surgery, it's really like kind of mysterious in some aspect because the patient goes in, gets anesthetized, we operate on them, they wake up and they're magically better. So, and there's a lot that happens behind the scenes that it's more of an energetic thing that happens that people can't physically see, but I could sense it and know that it was there. So I've been very fluent at reading energy my entire life. Okay. So I could feel things that were happening and what was probably going to be happening a step or two before it actually would happen. So, and I worked in the ICU back in the early 80s at Yale New Haven Hospital in Connecticut. I worked in the medical intensive care unit, and you would be, you're working with patients one-on-one, and you really are dialed in and you could sense what's going on. It's almost like you become one energetically with this patient. So you're able to really almost feel what's going to happen next. And I would tell the doctors things that you might want to check, blah, 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 because I think that's going to happen. And they wouldn't listen to me and it would happen. And they're like, how do you know this stuff? I said, I just know. Wow. So they were able to see that because we all have that intuitive ability. It's like, I'm going to explain it like on a continuum. You either have it highly developed or not developed at all, but everybody has that capability. I feel that intuitive ability is really our sovereign gift, that when you are connected to yourself, you have access to that. And what I mean by connected to yourself, many of us have a tendency to live in our minds. We are thinking about things, worrying about things, stressing about things. We're worried about tomorrow, contemplating what we should have done yesterday. We're never in the present moment because you're not in your physical body. You're in your head. You're from here up. When you're able to move from here to here, heart space, you get to be integrated more in your physical body. When you're in your physical body, you get to feel emotions. You can't feel emotions when you're up here. You intellectualize emotions. And a dead giveaway for people when they're in their head and you talk about emotions, they say, I think I feel. What's I think I feel? What the hell is that? So it's a giveaway that they're disconnected. I feel a lot of people are disconnected from their physical body. Yet our physical body is necessary for us to experience our emotions, okay? Because to be in your body, you have to be in the present moment. When you're in the present moment, that's where you get to access and feel everything moment to moment, nanosecond to nanosecond. And you're able to ebb and flow with what's going on. Yes, you could make a more valid choice. You could choose to react. That's a choice. Or you could choose to observe and say, that's interesting. I'm feeling something uncomfortable. Let me just sit with this. Emotions freak the bejeebers out of people because they think they're going to open Pandora's box and the lid is never going to shut again. Newsflash, it will shut. You have to remember, we talked about everything is energy, so are emotions, so are thoughts, so are beliefs. When we don't experience those, that energy never gets dissipated and neutralized. It's got to go someplace. So guess what? It gets stored in your energy field and then eventually it pops into your physical body and then you start creating some health challenges for yourself or, whatever that looks like for you. But it's to get your attention, to pay attention. Our normal tendency sometimes is when we have a pain or discomfort in our body, we run to the doctor, get a pill, procedure, and lickety-split, we push it away. But when there's a pain in the body, it's usually a somatic response to something deeper, maybe a belief that is unconscious, that's coming into consciousness that we need to look at. And sometimes when we're able, say for an example, you have knee pain, and all of a sudden it came out spontaneously, and you're like, what is this? I'm going to take medication. I can't, I invite you to sit with whatever pain is going on within your body, in this case, maybe the knee pain, and just focus so much love, appreciation, and acceptance to that area. Just flood it with pink love and light, because this is an aspect of you that maybe something happened in another time and place. You unconsciously stored it someplace in your energy field. And now it's getting your attention because it needs to be dealt with. Our natural tendency is to want to push something away. I'm inviting you to take what the pain is, embrace it, love it up like you would your most precious pet or human, and just love it up because it's a part of you that fractured off in another time and place that wants to be called back to home. Your soul, so you could be complete and whole. What you may notice once you focus on that area, that pain will dissipate. Maybe it'll travel to another part of your body. Just continue to chase it with the love and appreciation, because these are parts of you that want to come back to home. We don't want to keep it separate from yourself. Our focus is to call back all our fragmented parts so we become complete and whole within ourselves.
That's beautiful. I love what you talk about as well, of like actually going into the pain rather than trying to quiet the pain or turn away from it. And I think it goes back to what you're talking about with emotions and how we're worried about that Pandora's box opening. And I think it's the same when we feel pain. It's like, well, if I give it all my attention, it's going to get louder. And my experience has been what you're talking about, where it's like it wants that love and attention and it helps to dissipate it. And so it actually can tend to soften it.
Absolutely. And it's about, we talk about the law of attraction. When you're sending something love and appreciation, that focus is different than it's like, I hate you and I want you to leave, right? So it's different. It's one's calling it closer to you and embracing it, and the other one's pushing it away. And, many of us have been raised to ignore it. It'll go away. It doesn't go away. It actually gets bigger and grows. And it'll eventually show up someplace else.
Yeah. Well, one thing that this makes me think of that I'd love to get your perspective on, I know so many people right now, so many women who are going through menopause in some
Mm.
version or another, and they're having such a tricky time managing the symptoms that show up and the this transitional period. And that seems to be one sort of gateway that really is a hard transition for most women. Is there anything that comes to mind in terms of experience with clients that kind of softens that a little bit?
Well, we have to remember that menopause is just a normal transition for us female folk. And I feel that it has a lot to do with each one of us individually and also ancestrally, too. We're in the time of the divine feminine, right? So for the longest time, everything has been masculinized, okay? And the whole women thing has been suppressed. I feel how women could really get through menopause with a lot more grace and ease is just to embrace it, allow it to be your teacher, okay? Because the things that are happening, if you're able to, through meditation, go into your body and just ask what it needs from you. Your body is a highly resourceful container. We are wired to heal, okay? We are wired to come into alignment. The issue is that we've been programmed over the millennia to give that power away to something outside of ourselves, okay? So it's about coming back to self. It's about creating a relationship with yourself, because the longest relationship you're ever going to have in your life, folks, is the one you have with yourself. So nurturing self, saying wonderful things to ourselves in the silence of our mind, because many of us are not very kind to ourselves and we beat ourselves at nauseum. So it's really about embracing where you're at, asking your body for the wisdom that it carries, because it does carry a lot of wisdom, and to learn and grow from that. It's almost as if you're befriending that whole process instead of saying, oh my God, I'm going through menopause. Give me the pill. I invite people to step into it and embrace it and have it as a learning experience for them, because you're going to gain some wisdom. There's a Greek goddess called Hecate, and she's the mother maiden crone, all three goddesses in one. And it's embracing those aspects of ourselves. And sometimes the crone, it's the wisdom that we carry as wise women. And you're entering that period of the wise woman. And there are things that we know, but also our body knows, because we're only a small fragment of our master soul that's, in another time and place. And we can access that and get the wisdom.
That's beautiful. So I know that you're not only a nurse practitioner, but you're a medical intuitive and an energy whisperer. Can you tell us what an energy whisperer is?
Well, some of my friends coined that phrase for me, because it was just like, I read energy as if it was like my native language. Okay. And so when you're able to tap into energy, you're able to look at the different aspects of a person. If a person starts talking to me, it's just like it's like the yarn ball, which is knotted, gets unraveled. And it's just like, okay, I see how this and this and this. It's a matrix, and it's more of a matrixical way of reading energy. But you have to remember, everything is interconnected in ways we have no idea. We're in a 3D reality. This is more fifth dimensional and beyond. So it's about being in the flow and being able to read energy, basically, for lack of a better description. And it's not just the mental, emotional, spiritual, dimensional, and physical. It's also the ancestral and dimensional aspects as well, because it's all just intertwined together.
So, do you have a story of a client that comes to mind right now that can help to illustrate for people of how that works with you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to talk about a client that I had who was on the list to get a liver transplant because he had developed hepatitis C and had gone through the protocols. And that, the protocols weren't working and he needed to receive a liver transplant in order to survive. And so working with him early on, we kind of knew that because when I tapped into his energy, um, he was he was supposed to be receiving a gift from somebody, and it was a karmic gift, basically, from another time and place, and the gift was the liver.
Wow.
And he would never know the person, but it was a karma from a previous lifetime. So I kind of knew that kind of going in when I tapped into his energy. But what was happening for him, he would be on the list. We'd get to the 11th hour, they would have a liver, and then he'd go to the hospital and it wasn't compatible.
Wow.
So it was just like this was happening over and over. So, we were trying to figure out what that was all about. So when I tapped into his body, what I was able to see was that his heart space and his liver. Okay, now we have to remember energetically, things are wired a lot differently than we physically know. But energy travels from the heart to the liver and from the liver to the heart. And then it's like these channels. So the channels were blocked between the heart and the liver. And so I also noticed that there was like a big wall of resistance around his heart. And I said, are you carrying something really heavy on your heart? And he just all of a sudden welled up and got emotional. And he said, yeah. I said, what are your thoughts about doing some forgiveness work? Because I feel this could be really instrumental and assistive to you. It'll make you feel better, but let's see what happens. So about a week later, he had done some forgiveness work. And do you know that a liver came available and it was the correct one for him?
Wow.
So what I'm saying is that sometimes energetically we hold ourselves back from what we're supposed to be having, because I believe that if he got a liver with that condition there, it would have just failed, even if he got the transplant, because the blockages are still there. So when you're able to heal the blockages energetically and to allow that to go away, it helps. And, just a little bit about forgiveness. When we don't forgive, we're really punishing ourselves. We're not punishing anybody else. So, we could be stubborn and resistant and, defiant, but that's not what it's all about. It's about, okay, you know what, have some grace and kindness to yourself and self-compassion, because that's what we're really all about right now. And this is going to be the key that opens the lock for a lot of people, is the whole concept of self-compassion, because our natural tendency is to judge and criticize ad nauseum. And we do it a lot on the external, but we do it a lot too in the internal as well. So when we're starting to go down the rabbit hole of beating ourselves up, it's time to say, okay, self-compassion, you don't have to figure out what the word is. Just by saying it as a mantra is a higher vibrating word. So it's going to raise your frequency. So this other stuff is going to kind of dissipate. And it's that simple.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So, and what an amazing story with the liver transplant. How do you work with clients? Do you do hands-on healing? Are you seeing them in person? Do you have online sessions? How does that work?
I do, if they're local in the San Diego area, they're more than welcome to come to my home office. I'm finding that doing things virtually is as effective or sometimes even more effective, because it's the whole distance of energy. Sometimes the further away you are, the more effective it is. So the hands-on is, I think that's something that is awesome, yet we are so powerful right now that energetically the intention and where we focus our attention, it's like bullet points to getting to where it needs to go. So I have a virtual practice. I have clients from all over the world, and they come to me for various things. If it's a health type of thing, or if it's just that they're on a spiritual awakening and all of a sudden the rug got pulled out from underneath them and life had been working fine and no longer is. It's because many people have been focusing on the external and they're realizing that they need to come internal, but sometimes they don't have a reference point for that. So I assist a lot of people with that as well.
That's beautiful. And so how do people find you? Like, with your online work, your virtual work?
They could go to my website. It's drdoloresfazzino.com. And I also do private sessions. And I also have a TV and radio show called The Dr. Dolores Show on Inspired Choices Network. And we air every Wednesday live at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time. And we talk about everything spiritual and everything to assist people on their spiritual journey. And we're also going to be creating a program called I'm Awake, Now What? And it's a transformative community, a membership community where once a month we do a live Zoom call. And we provide resources and tools and healing and community for people on their journey of awakening.
That's so beautiful.
So they could go to my website and click on I'm Awake Now What? And to get more information.
Wonderful. Well, Dolores, thank you so much. I have loved this conversation. And, thank you for being a trailblazer, being a pioneer, to kind of help lead the way for this great awakening that we're all going through now.
Well, Kara, thank you so much for having me, and keep carrying on with what you're doing as well. It's very important to get the word out so people don't feel like they're alone, because they never are.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to this episode of Meditation Conversation. I would be so grateful if you would share this episode with someone in your life who would appreciate it. This helps to build momentum and make high vibrational content such as this more accessible and easier for everybody to find. I'd also be grateful for you to subscribe to this content. Thank you so much for your support, and I look forward to the next meditation conversation.